Welcome, folks, to Alliance on the Move. It is the 28th day of April. Am I right? Or is it 29th?
29th.
29th, the 29th day of April. Saturday, the 29th day of April. And I don't know about you, Julia, but that theme song that the introduction comes in with, it's very
Catchy.
it pumps me up.
It's very catchy indeed.
Welcome, one and all, folks. And whether you're joining us in one of the other programs or it's this one, we're gonna ask you guys to share the live. Do what you gotta do, guys. And we're happy to be here with you. It's been a little while since I've been on with Charita, isn't it so?
I've been on the ground, Sharon. There's
You've
no
been
better
on the
place to
ground.
be.
You have been on the ground. Excellent. So let us start there because we had a walkabout. The Alliance to Change of the Breeding Hope market area today. And Georgia, I dare say, even though the folks who are helping us with the photographs haven't sent them to us as yet, we're going to still have you guys see some of that later on. I was quite surprised and not surprised by some of the comments of people we talked with at Breeding Hope today.
I don't think I was that surprised because based on the walkabouts we had at Skeldon late last year, I wasn't too surprised because I know there wasn't much changes going on in terms of the economic situation in our country. I know definitely that persons did not have more spending power this year than they did last year. So when we had that walkabout and we spoke to the folks, it was just collecting the evidence of what we already knew and or we already assumed was happening on the ground
Mhm.
because those persons are saying it's difficult. Business is extremely slow. They are doing things that they didn't do before. I know two persons actually said that they were just strictly selling greens before, but now they had to basically diversify a little bit, and now they're selling greens still, but now they're also cooking just to make
Yeah.
ends meet so that they can cover their rent at the end of the month and make sure that they can have something to live off of themselves and their families. It's absolutely difficult.
Yeah, and I think you know what? I think that is one of the main things we heard. A lot of people now got to switch it up. What the
Mhm.
market is demanding and cook because you could do without a pair of shoes or what have you, but you have to eat. People got to eat, and that's one of the things we kept hearing over and over. And Rita, I want you to expound on this other one because quite strangely, we spoke to Vreeden Hope is a mixed area. There are a lot of people who sell there, both East Indian people and Afro Guyanese as well. One of
Yeah.
the things we heard from a lot of East Indian folks was this refrain: "I don't want some racial. I want some racial." But since this government come in, the PP government, we punishing. I wish it wasn't so. I wish they told us lofty things about the incumbent administration, but that is what they said. What do you make of that?
I think it's an admittance on their part that regardless of the demographics and all of those things, it's difficult on the ground. And I think that the message that was being translated there more so is that regardless of which government, the government that is in power at the moment, they're looking at how it translates to them economically, how they're feeling it in their pockets. Every time somebody says that, I don't want to sound racial, it just gives it reminds us as to the polarized society that we're living in, and that's the truth. That's the only way
Yeah.
you can look at that because everybody is conscious of, well, who is not openly conscious of it. It's a subconscious that says that this is a polarized country that we're living in. For generations we've voted a particular way and all of that, but the fact remains that today we're feeling it on the ground. Our pockets are feeling it. We understand what is going on, and we have to admit that this is the fact of the matter. The fact is that we have been suffering since the PP administration is in power. That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah. Drew, maybe as an economist, you can explain it better for us. Why is it that we see all of this? I don't know if I'm going to phrase it right. This per capita growth, in GDP, and all of these things we're hearing of all of these oil finds. There was one just last week. Hess reported yet another oil find, but yet we don't feel any better than we were before we started producing oil. Is the dynasty?
It's interesting that you said per capita growth, because the truth is like that when the term per capita growth, it's just basically saying the amount that you have your GDP growth as a proportion of the population, and that's why just per capita growth. So you do the division, you say, well, this is how much it's actually attributed to every person living in the country. Just give an average on that. But the fact is, the government of the day has to put policies in place to actually have those money being beneficial to the persons there on the ground. You have, in order for the people to be the beneficiaries of the money, the government have to put policies in place to ensure that. And we have said time and time again that the government policies are not designed to make sure that persons at the lower level, the working class of the country, is actually taken care of. And that is the message that I think that I believe it is resonating more and more with persons every day, because it is it's impossible for persons to go out there knowing and feeling how difficult it is to survive today and not have an acknowledgement that it is not, the money is not being dispensed so that we can benefit from it. Persons are seeing it, they're acknowledging it, and I believe we're going to get to a point that everybody is openly knowledgeable. But that is my hope, and that's why we're on the ground doing the work, so persons would actually be able to say that we have this information, we understand why. And a lot of the persons out there, what was amazing, shared, is that how the persons there know, they're saying that persons need to be paid more. They're saying public servants need to be paid more in order for them to have more disposable income to come out there to shop and to make sure that everyone survives. And that was one of the resounding message we got there. And every time you go to the level of markets and so forth, that's the message that you're hearing there from the vendors. They're all asking for persons to be paid more, because they know it will come back to them, and those persons will come and they will shop there. And one of the other things that was very clear is that they understood very clearly that the money that is being spent, and everyone is talking about the budget being over $781 billion this year, and a comparison being made to when the coalition was in office, the budget being 230 billion, and those numbers, now you had 781 billion. Persons not feeling a cent of that money, and everybody is saying it. And I want to add, one particular woman that we spoke to, a fish vendor, she was very vocal as to where she stands. And she was saying that, she wants in her lifetime for her to be able to see the benefit of these resources, and also for her children and grandchildren to be able to see the benefits of these monies. And I keep hearing the conversation being around the PPP, always saying that they're here for the private sector. They're always saying that they are the drivers of the private sector. But then everyone now is realizing that they don't care about small and medium scale businesses. That is not the interest of theirs. And when they go out and they speak about the private sector, they're actually talking about the huge businesses at the very top, and all their policy is designed to make sure that those persons are well taken care of, and they're cushioned against whatever economic impact may arise and all of those things. But the persons at the lower end, the vendors at the market, and those persons that have stores and shops, supermarkets in the community and so forth, they are not catered for within those policy directions. And it was amazing to hear persons say that just yesterday we went and we had a walkabout with them just this morning, but they were saying just yesterday that they had so many things, conversations being had there at the level of the bus drivers and the taxi drivers, and they were saying the exact thing even before we got there. So it's good to hear that a movement is on the way when it comes to those persons being enlightened, they've been outspoken about what is going on in the country. We encourage them to continue. We encourage all of you out there watching to continue to have these conversations. It's so important that everyone voice their opinion at this point in time.
Yep, yep, yep. And again, folks, we engaged hundreds of folks this morning at the Breeding Hoop Market, and that was the one consistent message here. They're very concerned about housing. They're very concerned about crime and healthcare and all of that. But people in this country are hurting badly financially. People are hurting. And Judy did touch on something that I think is worth repeating, because we spoke with a store owner, for instance. He says, I don't want this money, oil money, 5 years from now. I don't want it 10. I need some of that money now if I'm going to make it. And he had a big store. If I'm going to make it in business because of how things are so bad, right? We need this money now. We spoke with one woman there at the Freedom Hoop Market who showed us. She said, in the past, I'm lining the walls of this store with the boxes, right? Boxes that I have already invested money, and as things, as goods go, we pack out more stuff. So I can't do that now because the things aren't selling. I can't make that investment now because the things just aren't moving as they used to. I mean, it was quite startling for me.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we did here that kind of really pushed at your emotional buttons a bit, to see how persons are really really suffering. And another thing that was very hard to hear is vendor after vendor saying that there's so much they're selling perishables, things that actually spoil. The shelf life is not that long. You're talking about greens, vegetables and so forth, and they're talking about how many things they have to throw away. And one woman showed us, she's like, look at these things here. She said, it's about this time, if I don't get it off, it's going to spoil. And that this is something that has been happening to them for quite some time, because persons are not able to shop as much. And I just want to link it, Shara, to so the report that actually came out, and I know you spoke about this heavily last year, when the report that actually said that persons were choosing to eat less meals per day as opposed to having 3 meals per day. And this is what the real impact is just, these are not standalone issues.
Yep.
If persons cannot eat 3 square meals per day, then they are purchasing less things to act from the market. And this is why you see now the vendors having to throw things away and all of those things. The one was saying that usually if you can get, if for example you buy $80,000 and goods and you try to sell off and throw, she said she can't do that anymore.
Correct.
Almost half of that quantity now that she's buying, and she still have things that has to be thrown away at the end of the week and so forth. So it's a very very sad situation. And I want to say that this particular matter with having to throw greens away because it's perished and all of that, this is something that we heard even last year when we were at Skeldon. It's something that is happening throughout the country. This is not a standalone issue at any one particular part of the country. The entire country is complaining about the same thing. It is hurting people economically throughout Guyana. And of course, the people that are going to feel the squeeze the most are the persons at the lower tiers in our country. And I say that because I understand that best. I have lived it. I know what I'm talking about. Those are the persons that are suffering the most. And that's sadly the majority of our country.
Yeah. Unfortunately, again, I was very startling. I know people got it hard, but to hear people who are in business talk about how difficult it is to make a bread in this economy, again, was quite startling for me there, quite startling, right? And again, these are people who are not only plagued with financial problems because money and circulating according to them, but again, they live in the society. They got, they're at the mercy of the people who use the roadways recklessly. They're the mercies of the healthcare system that is not catering for the needs of people in this country. They're at the mercy of so many other things, and then they got the economic one that is a blight and like a harness around your neck, like a weight around your neck. People trying to survive, trying to survive.
And it's difficult, and we keep seeing the repetitiveness of persons coming out there and voicing their opinions right now. And we are seeing the repetitiveness of ministers in government, certain ministers in government, when they're hearing these things. Every time they see a social media post and someone that gets a little traction, then they come out and start talking about naysayers and all of those things. But I have to commend persons for standing their ground and actually speaking out right now. I think that this is the first time I'm seeing such widespread criticism when it comes to the economic hardship that the country is facing. And I want to commend persons for having the ability and having the will and the strength to speak out, because it's absolutely necessary that your voices be out there. And it is amazing when you go on the ground, there is absolutely no one that does not want to talk about it. Everyone wants to speak about it. They're all open to conversation. They're glad to see that persons are still making representation on their behalf. And we will continue to do that. We'll continue to meet with the people. We'll continue to gather the information from them firsthand. And we have to continue to push forward and to fight their fight for them.
Exactly, and I think some of what has happened to some of what we heard this morning is kind of like buyer's remorse,
Yeah.
right? You know, you said it just now. These are folks who may have voted for the PP all their lives, and they're stunned. And they're stunned because the problem used to be Granger, the problem used to be Ramchetan and Moses, and now the folks have had it for 3 years. They're seeing money coming in Dora Dora. They see what is being produced by oil and gas, but they're feeling none of that. None of that they're not feeling. They talk about shore-based at billing at Region 3. They say, what happened to us? What's going to happen to us?
Yeah, it's quite crazy to hear all of those things being spoken about there in the shore base. I know that's a different conversation because a whole lot was said about the shore base project that is going on there at best, and I know we're gonna be digging into that
Yeah.
a whole lot more in the future. Just touching on the surface right now, but the folks on the ground, Sharon, I think we were all very pleased to be able to interact with them and listen to how much they're willing to speak out. I think that was a highlight about everything. They have acknowledged that yes, we have supported these people, but they're also acknowledging that regardless of whether or not we supported them, our family is suffering right now. We are worse off than we were before. They're saying it blatantly, they're feeling this since the PPP took office. The woman said she cannot believe that with more money, they are worse off today than
Yeah.
they were prior. She said she
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
believe it. That's the truth. We
Yeah.
can't
And I
make
don't, go ahead.
You continue, Sharon.
I was going to say, I don't think we kind of value enough the fact that the last administration, the AFC, did all that they did. They didn't have oil money, they didn't have a cent of oil money, and did what they did for this country. There was infrastructural development, and great infrastructural development. Public servants, got an increase in pay every year of 5 years. The AFC was in government. The pensioners got stuff. The students got, you name it. You had the books, the bicycle, the everything, the bags, the meals, everything they had, right? And now with vastly more money, you mentioned it, all of these billion, we headed to $1 trillion budget soon, right?
Yeah.
All of that's being spent, and people are hurting. And you know what? I don't think some of those folks we spoke with this morning arrived easy at the point where they say, I want to be racial. Right?
Yes, they're not.
These
They're
are
not.
East Indian brothers and sisters saying, I don't want to be racial. But since this government come in, I mean, the two things are not even linked, right? But since this government come in, we ain't getting sales.
You know,
Things are moving.
Sharon, I just wanted to mention one other thing that was highlighted by a couple vendors, and I don't want to just not mention it right now, is the fact
Correct.
that they related to us very, very keenly when it comes to the discrimination in the distribution of cash grant in Region 3. Several vendors spoke to this issue, and I think that
Yeah.
I felt that it's something that they were completely. The woman used the word. She said, I am frustrated. She said, it is frustrated. I am frustrated right now. We are here. It is horrible. We are suffering, and I am frustrated. And I took a note. A physical note of that comment in my notes, because it's heart wrenching to hear people actually describe their current economic standing as one that is so frustrated and feel like they're at their end with all of what is the PPP is going on with right now. They can't
Yeah.
survive. And
Yeah.
with all
In fact, as a matter of fact, I saw there were members of our team on the spot helping some people out financially, because as you talk to people and you hear their story, what else can you do but take the money in your pocket and say, look, hope this can help in some way.
Yeah.
And that is quite startling. Billions and billions of US dollars, being produced every day from our oil and gas, still, our oil in particular now. And people, not see, we haven't seemed to move the needle in terms of satisfying people at all. And, it's quite frightening. And, the government got a long way to go, a very long way to go. And I want to add something, Rita, that we don't talk about enough. We talk about the money that's being produced by the oil that we're selling, but all of that was made possible by the last administration, who worked tirelessly to put together the framework that this government can now benefit from, and not even using those monies wisely.
Yeah, the framework that the PPP administration went on every platform and criticized and condemned, and when they got there, the only changes that they made was to remove oversight from the structure. And that is something that we need to talk about a whole lot more.
Yeah.
They are benefiting tremendously. They have the resources in hand, and what they're trying to do right about now, you just said, persons are not actually feeling the benefit, but a group of people that are actually benefiting is just the ones at the top. That 5% at the top, and it probably is even smaller than that. You probably can just narrow that down even to 1%.
Correct. Because
Yep.
due to the framework for the Natural Resource Fund, where the oil money goes into, the Natural Resource Fund, that was already there when the PP came in. The framework for the local content policy was already there when the PP came in. And so they're able to benefit from that now. The framework for the Petroleum Commission that I don't even want to operationalize to give supervisory jurisdiction over the natural resource sector, is already there. They tweak it to suit the friends, family, and favorites, but largely it was already there. And thankfully, the Guyanese people at least can benefit. Well, I can't even say can benefit, but their money's coming in.
To add to add to frameworks that was already there and all of that. We had and just 2 weeks ago we had a training. I was lucky to be a part of a training with the Canadian Audit and Accountability Foundation, and they were specifically talking about auditing oil and gas. Workshop is specific to auditing in the oil and gas sector. And one of the things that they were highlighting and commending Guyana for, and when these persons come to Guyana, they don't look at government and opposition. These are government policies, and one of the things that they were commending is the fact that we had in place and we were signed on to the EITI, the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. We were signed on to the EITI prior to the
Correct.
office, and they said this is a good thing, this is excellent. So during so we had to have a conversation go on to the point to say, but this is something that a coalition government did, because the coalition government was completely interested in transparency and making sure that everything is secure. That's why we signed on to all of those things. But guess what? One of the things that persons should be made aware of and reminded of is that when the PPP came into office, they basically had no respect for that body. And they got us to the point that as a country, we were, I believe, suspended from that body because of lack of submission of documentation.
Correct.
It's
Correct.
a continuous working that we're seeing that they're doing to unravel everything good that was put into place, things that we are being commended for at the level of the international community. They are unraveling those safeguards, and Sheridan put it over as the guardrails. They are completely trying to dismantle all of that, and we have to fight and we have to continue to advocate to make sure that we keep those things strong and sturdy, because if you allow these people to continue as they are, Guyana will be worse than Venezuela in just a few short years. So we have to continue to fight to make sure that we don't get to that state.
Very well. And some of the information that I'm looking at here suggests some of the things that happened under the last administration. And again, I think maybe one of the issues were that we didn't push enough on the public relations front and let people know what was happening and what was being done. Guyana's best ratings on the Transparency International Index was under the coalition government. One of the best ratings we have had. They're telling us that we were removed from the European Commission's money laundering blacklist under the last administration, which we got on under the PPP,
That's
the
correct.
last iteration in office. We
Mhm.
got tier one status for our fight against trafficking in persons. Tier one. Tier one, that's in front of the class. You move to the front of the class. Recently, the DEA, the FBI were on the ground here, had a meeting with the Attorney General and told them they don't want they don't want arrests where trafficking in persons locally is concerned, because there are arrests and then the case jackets go missing and then nothing become of that matter. But they want to see convictions. That's what the FBI told them. They want to see convictions. And then the DEA, they were able to open an office here after decades of effort under the PPP. Decades of effort. And, I dare say, Charita, we saw, I think it was last year, December, on International Anti-Corruption Day, when the American Embassy put out their statement on that. Again, they look for measures against corruption. They couldn't look under the 23 years of the PPP, and they referenced the Granger administration.
It was
And
2018, 2017 or 2018, I can't remember. But that
yeah,
was the only time that was the most recent piece that they had that they could have referenced, and they had to be honest about that, because the PP administration did absolutely nothing prior to 2015 and after 2020 to get anything done. So they were forced to reference the only thing that was done, the most recent thing that was done, and it was under the APNU AFC administration.
yeah.
That's
And
great.
as a matter of fact, Rita, we are about to shift gears. As a matter of fact, it's quite strange. But in that press statement last year, the American government was pushing the PPP, saying, we want to see your measures to fight corruption. The incoming American ambassador recently had her hearing before the congressional committee, and one of the things she has been briefed on by Sarah Lynch, because she mentioned it in her presentation, is corruption. And she said she's ready to stand with the administration to help to fight corruption. Corruption. So that is still that is. It seems like when the PP whenever they're in office, that blooms. Corruption blooms, and we lose transparency. There is a whole host of studies and reports and a whole host of them that they don't want to release. Why is that? It seems that we go in a different direction from good governance whenever they're in office.
PP does not practice anything that relates to good governance. I think persons, particularly persons listening to us here tonight, persons, I would challenge people, and I constantly do this. Challenge persons, go do the research for yourself. Go do the research. What are things that governments do when they're practicing good governance? It's public information. This is just not something that we alone can talk about. The PPP does not practice at any point in time good governance. I don't even know if they're comfortable in it with any aspect of democracy. The PPP administration operates as though they want to be a dictatorship government. That's how they structure themselves. They don't want to have to. And I think that you hear it a lot when they talk about the bureaucracy. They try to make it as though they're going to. I think Irfanali was one of them going out there, that he's not going to let any bureaucracy stop him from meeting with the people. And in essence, what he was saying there is that he will not respect the institutions and the organizational structure that
Yeah,
there to safeguard, and the checks and
yeah,
balances that are there to safeguard from corruption. That's what
correct,
in essence
correct.
he's saying, and that's what persons need to understand very keenly. When you do not go through the structures that have been put in place, those are the checks and balances to make sure that you are the beneficiaries of what is allotted there for you. When we have
Correct.
at the level of the National Assembly, we say these monies are budgeted for this region and so on and so forth and so on. Those systems and structures are put in place to make sure that the monies are spent how they should be spent. When persons bypass those systems, they in essence don't have to be accountable to you, the people, for the monies, your monies that are being spent. And those are things we need to be very keen on, and things that we need to fight against. every single step of the way.
Exactly, exactly. Let's turn our attention for a little bit to local government elections and some of the allied issues where that is concerned. You know, the Alliance for Change took a position that they didn't like, especially what was happening to the list. This voters list got a lot of problems, Rita, a lot of issues, and we've seen some of the effects of that. You know, some of the effects of having a dirty voters list. Interestingly enough, the People's Progressive Party, and especially its General Secretary and Vice President installed, Mr. Jaglio, Barrow Jaglio, felt the same way. And we were reminded recently with some footage, some video footage, you know, what a hypocrite Mr. Jaglio is, because here's a man who is now fighting against a clean voters list, but thought we ought to have it after they lost power in 2015. We started going in that direction, if you remember clearly, folks, when the current chairman of GCOM came into office. We were in the process of house to house registration. She halted that process. Well, we should have took that as a warning. He is now against biodata being used at the place of poll, but he was championing that. You know, if you felt this way strongly yesterday and today, you know, you come with a totally different view, you're a hypocrite. You are a hypocrite. And I want us to take a listen to some of what he said, and then we're going to try to pick through it and see, you know, what a radical 180 he has made on some of these issues. You know, let's take a listen.
We are going to make changes with our commissioners. We are going to argue for several changes at GCOM. First of all, we believe that Surge Valley does not have what it takes to deliver free and fair elections.
And this is since the last election?
Yes, we believe that he has succumbed to pressure, that he has allowed this institution to act in a partisan manner, and he is in charge. He can't put the blame on the chief elections officer. He's in charge of GCOM, and therefore the party has called for him to resign. But further to that, we need to make sure that the list is cleaned up so that people, the abuse that we had, where when you had sympathetic presiding officers to the opposition, allowing people who should not have voted to vote because they had extra ballots for people who had migrated and were or are dead in the polling stations, that if you have a new clean list, that will minimize that happening because they would not have the ballots in the polling station. Secondly, we need enhanced biometrics, because when some presiding officers said, like we had some cases in Victoria, this is Mr. X, just looking at the photo, and the polling agent from the party sits across the room or is in a hostile area, is afraid to object, they allowed a number of people to vote who should not have voted. But if you have biometrics, enhanced biometrics outside of just a photo ID, it could minimize that happening. We are going to push for electronic voting. Now, you have a system where you can do both. You can vote in the machine, and then it gives you, when you finish voting with the machine with enhanced biometrics, it emits a small paper which shows a ballot, which shows how you have voted, which you can then, like some systems have this method, which you can then put in the ballot box. So you have both systems. You can only access the voting through enhanced biometrics, like an iris scan, but you safeguard against presiding officers or anyone else acting capriciously and giving extra ballots out to people. But it's a dual system. It's both electronic and manual. That is paper trail.
Yes.
So we are going to be pushing for that. We have to ensure a fair system of hiring in GCOM, a fair system of hiring people, and that people who are affiliated with political parties do not work in GCOM. who have been openly partisan. There are several other things that we are going to pursue.
Yeah, so we have a number of things we can go through there, Zarita. A number of things.
Where do we start? You know, we could,
You know, let's start at the let's start at the chairman of GCOM, because here is the hypocrite, Mr. Jagdio, saying that the CEO is in charge, the chief elections officer is in charge, you know, and they put the blame of losing power at the feet of Suraj Bali. And so they said Suraj Bali must go. Now,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, this election COI, the report came out recently, the CEO is totally absent. It's like if she was not even in charge during, you know, the last election. The CEO is in charge, and so Suresh Bali must go. Clark must also go. Let's start there, Trita.
listen. When I listen to the tape, you know, it's as though one of the Barajaglios, either the one that we just listened to, or the one that you see weekly talking about why it is not necessary to have biometrics and why we are just talking all of those things, and we shouldn't be in that direction. You know, it almost seems like it's completely different people. So I want to ask the question, you know, we probably need to do some data analysis on this individual to see if there's an impersonator, because how do you move? How do you have the barefacedness to move from calling for biometrics, calling for
Correct.
the removal of the chair of GCOM and all of those things, and now it's as though you had some sort of amnesia as to what you were
Yeah.
calling for.
Yeah. We gotta inquire into his mental state, because that's not natural.
That is what
And
that is exactly.
the ease with which you come from one end of the spectrum to the next, as though you never held up
You never
belief
said
before.
that. Like you never said that. It was so crazy. And you know, one of the things he did say there also is that you go, and he was talk when he was speaking about biometrics being used and the benefit of using biometric, he was actually making a point that you have those persons within there on election day, you have the staff, and he said that persons could be afraid to speak out, like the same Jagbio, you know, that was,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
stating.
Now violently opposed to enhance biometrics. You know, he went on to say electronic voting too could be a feature. Where are we on that? You know, 3 years later. But one of the chief things that we're very strong on in the Alliance of Change is this clean voters list. He shared that position too. You know, now he has it within his purview to cleanse that list, to sanitize the list.
The man spoke about, let me just add this in right now. The man you just heard for yourself, the man spoke about having extra ballots so that persons that are overseas and persons that are deceased can vote. And this
Mhm.
very individual came and said, "What nonsense have no AFC talking about when they're talking about persons that are overseas voting and
Yeah,
persons that are deceased, votes are being cast in their name,
yeah,
all of those things." The same individual had these very concerns before, but you
yeah,
know, it's important that we make the distinction between the concerns that he had and what actually happened at the recount, because during the course of the recount, the only recount is the general recount that this country ever witnessed, that we had there in 2020, the 2020 election recount. What he was claiming was a possibility there in that video about
mhm,
persons overseas, ballots there for them to. What we witnessed was the evidence being unfolded of persons that were overseas having a vote
correct,
in their name, and
correct.
persons that were deceased having a vote cast in their name. But then he did a 360 180, whatever it is that you want to put it as though he don't know about these things, as though these things were never a possibility. And that's why it's
Yeah,
important
yeah,
to reminding persons of what
yeah.
he said before. You know, I
That's
don't
the
want to
wickedness. That's
call
the wickedness.
names, but it seems like lies. It seems like blatant lies now. How
Yeah.
could you
I'm
be
just saying, gotta watch them.
own? How could you be eating at your own conscience and actually saying that, This man was just speaking about having your eye scan, your iris scan, and all of
Yeah,
those things. Suddenly, we don't have the capacity and ability to move in that direction to in forms of biometric and so forth. Seriously, how do
correct.
we stand with that today?
How can he live with himself? Folks, if you're now joining us, if you missed that, listen to Mr. Jagju on these issues of the chairman of GCOM being in charge, and the box stops of the chairman of GCOM, and not the CEO to take responsibility for the things happening at GCOM. Here is Mr. Jagju proposing enhanced biometrics, and even electronic voting. Here is Mr. Jagdio, proposing to have a clean voters list. Say some of the problems we have electorally is with the list. We got started with the list. And now where's he and all of that? Take a listen.
So we are going to make changes with our commissioners. We are going to argue for several changes at GCOM. First of all, we believe that Surge Valley does not have what it takes to deliver free and fair elections.
And this is since the last election.
Yes, we believe that he has succumbed to pressure, that he has allowed this institution to act in a partisan manner, and he is in charge. He can't put the blame on the chief elections officer. He's in charge of GCOM, and therefore the party has called for him to resign. But further to that, we need to make sure that the list is cleaned up so that the abuse that we had, where when you had sympathetic presiding officers to the opposition, allowing people who should not have voted to vote because they had extra ballots for people who had migrated and or are dead in the polling stations, that if you have a new clean list, that will minimize that happening because they would not have the ballots in the polling station. Secondly, we need enhanced biometrics. Because when some presiding officers said, like we had some cases in Victoria, this is Mr. X, just looking at the photo, and the polling agent from the party sits across the room or is in a hostile area, is afraid to object. They allowed a number of people to vote who should not have voted. But if you have biometrics, enhanced biometrics outside of just a photo ID, it could minimize that happening. We are going to push for electronic voting. Now, you have a system where you can do both. You can vote in the machine, and then it gives you, when you finish voting with the machine with enhanced biometrics, it emits a small paper which shows a ballot, which shows how you have voted, which you can then, like some systems have this method, which you can then put in the ballot box. So you have both systems. You can only access the voting through enhanced biometrics, like an iris scan, but you safeguard against presiding officers or anyone else acting capriciously and giving extra ballots out to people. But it's a dual system. It's both electronic and manual. That is paper trail.
Yes.
So we are going to be pushing for that. We have to ensure a fair system of hiring in GCOM, a fair system of hiring people, and that people who are affiliated with political parties do not work in GCOM, who have been openly partisan. There's several other things that we are going to pursue.
Yep. So there you have it. The chairman has to take responsibility. The buck stops at the chairman. Enhanced biometrics. Who knew? That sounds foreign to me, Enhanced biometrics. I waiting for him to come out and say that's AI generated, artificial intelligence generated that, him saying that. Electronic voting, I mean, there's a whole menu of measures being presented here, right? A clean voters list. A clean voters list. And we can pick up Twitter on this fair system of hiring because the APNU AFC nominated commissioners, appointed commissioners at GCOM, You know, they've talked about how the system is unfair. The PPP want their men and women in there in certain key positions, and they would move heaven and earth to make that a reality. So where is this fair system of hiring?
You know, we mentioned at the beginning of the program that the PP is not concerned, does not concern himself much with any aspect of democracy unless unless it's when they intend to thwart democracy. That's how they operate. They are not interested in actually going through the structures and the systems that are being put in place, the checks and balances.
They abhor those things.
You know, I've shared it. I want to say this because I've said it on so many programs prior, that the people have a way about them. They stymie and they basically stop works being done. You know, they don't have various bodies in place and all of those things. And the only time they allow those things to start operation is after they have infiltrated the system and placed their people, their yes men and women, in the key positions to actually call
Yeah.
the shots, so that they wouldn't have to do much work when it comes to making sure that things go the way in which they intend for it to go. And that's the fact. And I know persons out there know, you know, I think Guyanese are at a place right about now that they understand the beast that they're dealing with as in the PPP administration. They understand this beast. So now it's about this time which we just keep continuing to call it out, every single last one, every single last move, and every single last action. To
Yeah.
hear about
Yeah.
you talk all of those things, absolutely crazy. He even spoke about, you know, they have presiding officers they made that may allow persons to vote, allow votes to be cast rather for persons that are not there, persons that are
Yeah.
overseas, persons that are deceased. And then
Sympathetic.
this sympathetic persons, yes, exactly. This very person went out there after 2020 and said we were talking pure nonsense. You know, that's not a system that can't happen.
Yeah. Yes, the system is so rigid and the safeguards and so on. Yeah.
There's absolutely
Yeah.
no way. And then we're condemning our own scrutineers that was in there and all that. Absolute garbage. And then he himself is saying there the person may be afraid to speak out because of all of what is going on within those stations and all that.
It's all very, very interesting. And then he goes on to talk about, you know, GCOM hiring party people. You know, clearly got a few people at GCOM that got, you know, party interest in the PPP.
Yeah,
You know,
and
clearly.
those persons are in key positions, decision-making positions. They're not interested in it in the persons that just have to go out there and do the hard work. They're interested in infiltrating the system at the level of the decision makers, person that call the shots and those things. And that's how they operate.
Yeah.
That's how the PPP administration operates. And people know it. I keep saying it, people know it, and I don't stifle your conscience, you know it. But for this video that is there and circulating very widely on social media, you know, for Bar Jagger, this is a moment of busted. You busted. Like, this is what it is. What are you going to say now about this? Are you going to claim that AI, you know, artificial intelligence
Yeah.
is generating?
Yeah. Well, you're gonna see some, no doubt, you can see some acrobatics in trying to maybe walk back some of these statements. You know, the chairman in charge, enhanced biometrics, electronic voting, a clean voters list, fair system of hiring, you know, no party hacks, no party people in that system, you know. And just recently, even the very commission of inquiry that they seem to be celebrating so much says there must be changes at GCOM. You know, it's too politicized and it cannot be effective and efficient in its current format. You know, so let's see what happens.
I didn't hear them highlight that part of
No. They take out some. I left the others. You know, it didn't bother them that no mention is made of the chairman in this report. That's fascinating in and of itself.
I think it should be fascinating to Bar Jaggi more than anyone else, because he holds a strong opinion, as you saw there, that the chairman is in charge and the buck stops at the chairman. That's a person who needs to be taken to task when it comes to anything concerning GCOM. He was of the firm opinion that it's not the CEO, it is the chairman that persons need to be looking at when it comes to what goes on at GCOM. So it's quite amazing to hear and to see persons right about now in the PPP, in the helm of the PPP administration, trying to walk back on all of those principles that they went out there and publicly stood by. Quite interesting, Sharon.
Quite interesting indeed. Rita, before we wrap up, we got a couple minutes left. I want to not end on a sour note of Jaglio, but to let people know, for instance, some of the things that are happening currently in the Alliance for Change, because there are certain things with goal that goes along with a vibrant political party, and one of them, for instance, is having internal meetings, having internal elections, amongst some other things. And we have a very, very important meeting coming up at the end of May, and that is our National Executive Committee meeting. We meet every quarter, and so we are meeting for this quarter. The National Executive Committee of the Alliance for Change. We're going to be meeting and discussing some very, very critical issue in terms of our party and moving it forward. Maybe you want to talk a little about that.
It's very important that any good political party, particularly one that stands for democracy, the Alliance for Change has been championing liberal democracy from the inception. Is something that we all stand so firmly behind. This is the reason why I'm a part of the Alliance for Change, because I believe wholly and solely in liberal democracy. I mean, it has its benefit, it has its pros and cons like every other system, but I believe the benefit outweighs the cons at all costs. And the Alliance for Change exercises those aspects of democracy, and we uphold the guardrails of democracy within the party by making sure that we have the various elections as we should, by making sure that the regional structures are in place as it should be.
Yeah.
We always make sure that the National Executive Committee meets, and those are the decision makers. We do not have a one-man show as opposed to the gentleman that was just shown on screen in that video. And we continue to do it. We will continue to make sure that we incorporate the ideas of all our elected representatives at the level of the party to make sure that every decision and that the Alliance for Change make is not a decision being made by one or two persons, but it's a collective decision by the national executive. And that's why we're having this very, very important meeting coming up. So definitely we'll be giving you an update thereafter as to what went on and what were some of the key decisions made at the level of the party at that meeting.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to touch on before we go, we're having a series of outreaches like we did this morning to Viridian Hope around the country. So we want to let our membership know, if you want to be a part of that, touch base with us. I think next week we're in Essequibo and some other places, So we were in Region 3, Viridian Hope. Today, next weekend, I think on the 6th, we're going to be in Essequibo. So look out for us there, folks. Look out for us. If you see us on the ground in Essequibo, do say hello. Do say hello. So there is that as well, Rita.
Yes, and thereafter we'll definitely be heading to Region 7, and those are the two upcoming outreaches, as we put it forward. We have two aspects of our outreaches, in one in which we meet with political representatives of the party, and then the other aspect, we reach and we do a walkabout within the community and touch base with as many persons as possible. So whenever we're there, we're going to be doing both. We're going to be speaking with party representatives, and then we're also going to be doing walkabouts. We definitely hoping to be
empowering our party reps in Essequibo, building capacity with them, and then we meet with members of the public as well. So there is that. Jurita, while all that was happening, a couple of days ago, I know you were the president of Youth for Change, which is the youth arm of the Alliance for Change. There's a new body in place now, and that's how we do things. We're not really want the power all the time.
Yeah, one of the most beautiful parts about politics, and I think the one that I embrace the most is actually having the ability to help to mentor more persons that are coming into the political party and giving them the opportunity to grow and watch them exercise all of the influence that they get over time. So it's quite a beautiful experience, and I want to say that it has been great to serve in the Alliance at the level of the youth arm, but we are not young forever.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as
And
we as we get a
a
little bit older, we have to step aside. Yes,
yeah,
we
yeah.
have to step
And
aside for
allow the
younger
little one
people
to
to come
pass.
forward. And I want to
Go ahead.
I want to say big congratulations to the newly elected president of the YFCD Youth for Change, Mr. Dylan Mohammed. And I want to say special congratulations to his entire team. And we know that they'll be moving forward. Very, very strong young people, very, very strong advocates in society. They have been out there, they have been working. Right now, they're in Region 2 doing a lot of work. So I want to say congratulations. And I know that they will be joining you, Mr. Mohammed, particularly will be joining you at some point in the very near future on this program. So you'll have an opportunity to hear from him yourself. But we continue to push, we continue to make
Will
sure
be joining us.
young
Yes.
people have an opportunity to play an active role in party politics in the Alliance for Change.
Yeah, and Rita, I was going to say that last year you yourself were elevated to the position of Deputy General Secretary in our
Yes.
in our party. Yeah, so there is that. Am I missing anything? I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like I'm missing something. Nevertheless,
Well, there's so much that goes on, but
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. You know, and
yes.
I
Go
want me
ahead,
to say
Mr.
that, you know, if you guys are out there and you haven't had a chance to you're not a member of any political party, you know, we're not too much into poaching people's member. You know, a lot of riffraffs might go across to other people's place. We into poaching everybody. We want proper folks. So if you guys haven't made a decision as yet to be part of any political party, we dare say have a look at the Alliance for Change, and if you want to become a member, you can reach out to any of us. We are available via Facebook. The party has a Facebook page. Reach out to us via any one of those media. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. You know, we're on YouTube as well. You can reach out to us in one of those places, and we're happy to point you in the right direction and give you the necessary guidance if you want to become a member of the Alliance for Change as well. Twitter.
Yeah, I want to close off that call by saying, particularly young people, we are so interested in having young people on board. And I want to just refer, as we started at referencing our walkabout today at Vreeton Hope. You know, one of the young men I did speak to, he's just 17 years old. And so his first ever opportunity to vote in an election will be in a general election, that is, would be at the 2025 election. And he was saying to me, you know, at the end of the day, we still got to work hard. And I took the time to explain to him that a lot of young people have this idea that if they vote, if they don't vote, whatever government is in place, they still have to work hard. Because the comment that I've been seeing like so many times, and I think it's important for us to address it with young people, to let them know that no matter which sector you go in, the informal sector, you just go, you're in a hustle. If you are the private sector, if you're in the public sector, no matter which sector that you're in, government policies decides on how much money you make, and government policies decides on what you can buy with that money, the quantity of things you can buy and all that. So never ever think that, oh, no matter what, you still have to work hard. That it is the polar opposite. Reality is the opposite of that. You have to be a part of the decision-making process, because whomever is in office is directly influencing how you survive on a daily basis. And I say that to say, young people, we need you to be on board more than anyone else. We encourage you to continue to come on board at every single day. Make sure that your voice is heard. We love to hear back from you every single moment of the day.
Yeah, you know, and I dare say, you know, as you were talking about some of the policies there. Every time we have an oil discovery in this country, guys, you should hear cha-ching. You know, knowing that money's in the bank. You know, money's in the bank. So I want to underscore the point you made that who lead matters. Who lead matters. Clearly, this government isn't going in that direction. We're almost out of time. Assistant General Secretary, Deputy General Secretary, I want to thank you for being part of the program today. I'm happy to be here myself. You know, I'll see you guys next week. I think that's going to do it for us. Read your final words.
Oh, see you guys next week. Thank you so much for having us here. Thank you for staying with us throughout the hour. It is always a pleasure to be with you. And you will be seeing a lot more of me right now. I've been on the ground for a little bit, but I'm back out and about. So you will be seeing a lot more of Director Finance. Have a good
Yeah.
day, guys. Have a good night.
Yeah. Stay safe and thanks for joining us, guys.